Ganesh Garu, Askarao Garu, Ghosh Garu, and a lot of other University of Hyderabad alumni here, other faculty members, students, offline here as well as online. I hope I'm audible online. Yes. This is a really an interesting visit because I find IFHE is an interesting jewel in the crown for various reasons. Firstly, you made a very significant impact in the Northeast. And secondly, you are getting counted globally in terms of your performance. But thirdly, IFHE is a very strange acronym. It could be made more user-friendly in future. I know there is a legacy to this acronym, but given the dynamic condition that are changing, I think it should become much more generalized acronym. It's just a suggestion. Today, I think the topic of our discussion, I would say discussion rather than monologue, is NEP, National Education Policy. I generally do not come with any PowerPoint slides because they are pretty much powerless. I want to be much more expressive the way thoughts evolve in me, so that it is much more conversational, discourse oriented rather than prepackaged material that is getting transmitted. So when I talk about education, for me education is emancipation. In this construct called creation, education has been one of the most beautiful constructs, most beautiful elements in this construct. Because through education, we have come to realize what we are, where we are, how we are placed in the context of this universe. It has given us a deeper understanding of ourselves. Without that, we would perhaps be lost. Education has given us the information that we are a part of several billions of years of existence as a universe. The age of the universe has been precisely calculated, estimated. And in that billions of years of universe that has been created by Big Bang, that's a separate discussion. The solar system, Earth itself, is again a part of billions of history, years of history. But Earth as an entity is an inconspicuously small entity in the universe. If Earth disappears today, nobody in the universe will notice it. Fundamental reality. And on Earth, when living species, living beings emerged, again few billions of years ago, human species actually emerged only few millions of years ago. We are most recent entrants in this drama of life. We are inconspicuous in the universe by size. We are almost inconspicuous in the drama of life by the length of the emergence. All species eventually have to disappear. Human species also will disappear. So we are part of a transient cycle. There is nothing in the human species that can give us this power of boasting oneself. Because the dynamic cycle of life, its evolution, its emergence is such that species evolve, species will perish. So we are part of that kind of context. It is in this context human beings have actually become extremely powerful. The power is so much that human beings are able to ask very, very fundamental questions. We are all sitting here, about 100 of us. Human beings ask, each of us sitting here is a unique happening. nobody like you in the future. You are a singular event in this universe. That is so for everybody. How is that? Such a thing happens by the laws of physics and chemistry, where each of us is a unique happening. This, I think, is a very important fundamental question that we are able to pose very sharply because of education. To me, this is a mind-boggling question. How come it happened now? Never in the past, never in the future. So in that sense, education gives us the power to ask questions which are very fundamental. And when you get fundamental answers, you liberate yourself. Because you get an understanding of such a depth that education becomes a tool to discover yourself in some way. So that is a philosophical takeover of what is education. And in India, education actually started with that context. Students went to a person called Guru to learn what am I, who am I. That's how the education started in India 5,000 years ago. In some real context, in Western civilization, few hundreds of years ago, 500, 600, 700 years ago, very large educational institutes were set up. Again, with the spirit of inquiry, what is this university all about? Natural sciences got born because of that inquiry. Newton's, Darwin's, Einstein's, Michael Faraday's came out of such universities where they were trying to ask, what is the nature of this creation? How did this all come about? So the natural sciences, which is more externally oriented inquiry, got initiated and beautiful fundamental discoveries were made. Whereas in our universities, few thousands of years ago, they were asking, who am I? More inward asking questions. That was a different inquiry. Western universities were asking more externally based questions. Different inquiry. Both were very beautiful inquiries. So education actually started as an inquiry. Let's understand. And then knowledge got born. Tremendous amount of knowledge, insights. So much so that human mind could conjecture abstract mathematics that could reveal the deeper secrets of atomic nature, quantum mechanics, partial differential equations. Right? Now quantum computing is on the way. These are all mathematical realities which human mind could conjecture and make significant inroads. We now know how the universe arose. And the universe arose simply because of quantum fluctuations. As simple as that. And people are able to theorize it, people are able to experimentally demonstrate it, time dilation, distance changes, relativistic mechanics, all these became reality, which is in some sense beyond human mind. So we could actually go into a realm which the mind cannot understand. We created with our minds those areas which mind itself cannot understand. Atomic nature, the dual nature of atoms. Right? And distance at action by quantum coherence, the Nobel Prize winning work. All these are fundamental realities which actually transcend human mind. So human mind could create things which transcended itself. That, I think, is a very, very beautiful reality of the analytical power of education. When I say education, it subsumes everything. Science, technology, humanity, aesthetics, music, everything gets subsumed. Because ultimately this knowledge flow is ours, interlinked. Only artificially we have segregated. Human mind is intrinsically emotional mind. Human minds cry, human minds laugh. That's how humanities came about. I mean, when things happen at a societal level, social sciences arise. Poetry arises. From poetry, patterns arise. And human mind becomes inquisitive in terms of science, gravity, quantum nature. All these are inquisitiveness when mind is deeply thinking. The basis of deeply thinking mind is humanities and social sciences. Emotion. Emotion is the seed by which we become inquiring in nature. I want to know. That's an emotion. If that emotion is not there, we don't do anything. We are emotionally driven. That is the basis of humanities and social sciences, which transcend into natural sciences. I want to know. I want to know how the sound is getting amplified. I want to know that flower, which is so beautiful. Why did the color come about? Why is the symmetry there in the flowers? That's an inquiring mind, which is deeply emotional. I want to know this. I want to know is an emotion. So sciences happen. And from sciences you discover patterns, gravitational waves, materials, engineering happens. And from engineering you see so many more patterns. Again emotions arise. So ultimately we are interconnected. Social sciences, humanities, sciences, technology, everything. So in any educational enterprise of this sort, there must be all these activities. And all these activities must be appreciated in an integrated manner. That is what NEP does it. Before NEP, that thought of integrating streams of knowledge was not well emphasized. I must say this very emphatically. Only in NEP, the emphasis was given that let us learn all these things in an integrated manner, because knowledge is interconnected. Nothing in this world is isolated. Everything we learn in an integrated manner. In fact, learning is a diffusion process. You never know where the mind gets its information from. Sometimes it may get from textbooks. Sometimes it may happen in classrooms. Most of the time, mind actually learns by various other stimuli beyond the boxes. So it's a three-dimensional diffusion process which is emotionally driven, and that process intrinsically has to be interconnected process. So in NEP 2020, for the first time, we realized that let us do learning in a holistic manner, in an integrated manner. Let us not compartmentalize. Too early, too soon. This, I think, is a very important take home when you bring NEP document. And I must say with some level of profound gratitude that primary template of NEP 2020 was derived from the paradigm that we were following in University of Hyderabad. University of Hyderabad started undergraduate education a few decades ago. And in our undergraduate education, the first semester, second semester student will study everything. He will study drama, he will study music, he will study chemistry, leadership, mathematics. All these foundational courses. It's a menu. In the menu-driven system, you can pick and choose. You can pick and choose any electives so that you are broad-based. Initially, your base has to be much broader in terms of appreciating the knowledge. This was followed in University of Hyderabad in our 5-year undergraduate program decades ago. This concept was borrowed in the NEP template. What I am saying actually was articulated by Narendra Bharati in our foundation. So I'm very happy to say that good educational institutes naturally follow NEP 2020 principles. When you start learning in an integrated manner, you have a better sense of appreciation of what knowledge is. Knowledge for the sake of knowledge is the primary driver. And then when you acquire so much of knowledge base increases tremendously, which is happening now. When knowledge base increases tremendously, emotional human mind ultimately wants to exploit it. Human mind by evolution is an exploitative mind. Inquisitive, of course, but after learning many things, human mind also wants to exploit it, wants to harness it. And in the process of this enterprise called education, we set up so many universities where education for inquiry became education for enterprise. Inquiry became enterprise. And when you have an enterprise, you need to have markers to distinguish between who is a good student, who is a bad student, who is to be rewarded, who is to be given higher salary, who is not to be given higher salary. The marking system began, grading system began, curriculum happened, examination, became a big deal. So from knowledge, we became an enterprise, and from enterprise, we became grading system. And from grading, we became degrees, piece of paper of degree. And then from there, the whole tamasha started. So much so that we have now generated a lot of degree holders who pretty much don't know anything. Unemployed. In most universities, I would say in India, perhaps even globally. So the enterprise actually gave rise to products which are not only not employable, but also are completely uninteresting. Uninteresting because they don't ask any interesting questions. They don't do anything worthwhile. There's nothing we can extract from them. It is in this context NEP2020 got enunciated. And NEP2020 started telling, let us do what is called outcome-based education. It's a beautiful expression. We have not heard about this when we were learning education. Outcome, there is an outcome for education. Of course, we got our outcome because we strive for it. We were driven by that one teacher who inspired us underratedly in the school system. He said, go and find out yourself to me. And I went and found out. Ultimately, you did not need any schools or colleges. It is all do-it-yourself exercise. Finally, once you are triggered, you are done. It doesn't matter where you are. Do we have those triggering elements? We have beautiful curriculum, beautiful institutions, beautiful campuses, but do we have those triggering elements who will say, go do it yourself, discover it? NEP2020 is emphasizing on that. We need to do large-scale teacher training. We need to generate teachers who are master trainers. For a long time, we have ignored teachers. Teacher is the essence of education. A good teacher. A teacher who can actually light your fire and leave you aside. Those kind of teachers we want to generate. IFHE needs to generate inspiring teachers. We don't need a lot of them. They don't come in large numbers, by the way. That's the nature of the construct. They only come in few in number. You need to harness them. How you do it is do-it-yourself exercise. NEP2020 says you have to do it. Do large-scale training so that few gems show up. We are all part of Maxwell distribution. Unless you have a distribution, you don't have the peak. Peak doesn't happen on its own. Peak will happen only when you have a large distribution. You have to generate a large distribution of training by whatever mechanism you can. And then you will have those pushers, Anola pushers. So, a good teacher will inspire the young minds towards an outcome, towards a result, towards a deeper achievement. And then ultimately the student has to do Because intrinsically education is your own learning. Nobody will come and inject education in your mind. This is the point. You have to crave for it. You have to go and search for what you are looking for. In NEP2020, I think the right ecosystem will get created for asking the right questions. Because in NEP2020, education is not just degree certificate yielding process. It is a process whereby you develop critical thinking. Critical thinking word is used in the document. You develop higher order thinking. You ask questions about yourself. That is higher order thinking. You also ask questions about how do I acquire this skill? What do I need to do to acquire this skill which I need to solve this problem? So the learning outcome has become sharpened. That's a very important take home of NEP2020 as a philosophy. Of course, in the document it is there, but as a philosophy, every student has to chase an outcome. I want to learn this. Unless I learn this piece of degree doesn't mean anything to me. And another important thing has happened in the process of NEP2020, and that is the knowledge-centric process and vocational training process have been brought on a plane now. Somebody may not have knowledge but may have a lot of vocational training. There may be a beautiful artist who may not know much about the knowledge basis of the art, but he can create. That's a skill, vocational training. So vocational training, knowledge base have been brought onto the same page of what is called curriculum-based credit framework. How much one has to learn to acquire this credit? There are different levels. The same subject, young child versus a little older child versus a senior student, they all learn at different levels on the same subject. So you need to stratify that and have some level of parameterization in this national credit framework which amalgamates the knowledge content and vocational training. For the first time, I think in India, this has been generated. If you go and look at the document, it's a very interesting document. It's a very challenging document. How do you equate a vocational training skill to knowledge base? Not easy. It's not easy. It's a big challenge. But I think some notional parameterization has to be done. It has been done. So that we bring in people who know things in terms of vocational training, who know content in terms of knowledge base, they all be given certain credits. Because ultimately you need to put a marker. It's a large enterprise. You can't go away from it. The enterprise has come to stay. So in this large enterprise, you generate markers which are credible. Very important. And once you generate markers in the form of credits, if I learn this credit in this university, I may be interested in acquiring another credit in some other university. I'm free. I'm a free entity. I will be free. Learning process is by nature a freedom process. So if I'm able to acquire these markers from other institutes, I should be able to combine them and say, yes, this much of knowledge content, this much of vocational training I have acquired by parameterization that the system has set up. So I should be able to get this kind of degree. And I can take a break and come back and amalgamate. So this level of flexibility is very, very important. And in pre-NEP2020 era, there was no such flexibility. Zero flexibility. Once you drop out of the race, you are gone. That's not fair. So you have enormous level of flexibility. You have the ability to integrate knowledge and vocational training in a proper manner. And you have the ability to look around and see what you want to learn or what you want to do in your life. ability to exercise options is given to you. And tomorrow, digital universities are ultimate realities. So you can stay where you are and acquire your degrees. When I say degree, I mean knowledge or vocational training. You can acquire from a distance through digital universities. You can empower yourself at a place where you are. That model is here to come. Ultimately, 10, 20, 30 years from now, maybe more like 20, 30 years from now, all these physical structures won't mean much. Ultimately, I'm talking about 20, 30 years from now. Why? Because when quantum computing becomes a reality, the communication speeds would be million times faster than this. I don't have to come here and lecture you in physical presence. I can be where I am. As a student, you can be where you are. Communication can happen rapidly. The so-called UPI in money transactions can happen in education. In UPI, you can transfer money from any bank to any bank almost in the world within seconds. You get acknowledgement also. The idea of NEP2020 would be to bring in UPI in education system. At no cost, knowledge should be communicated from the donor to the recipient. The recipient has to have a desire to acquire. At no cost, at no time or delay, that should happen. And that technology is knocking on the doors. Then maintaining these physical universities, which are expensive to begin with, would have to vanish. This is the reality. 30 years from now, I would say 20, 30 years. When we are staring at such a reality, we really have to get our act together in terms of generating very, very strong knowledge base. Knowledge base that will cut across barriers. If I want to acquire knowledge and I don't have enough English proficiency, I should not be deprived. In my local language, I should have the knowledge base. Because I have the desire to acquire. That desire as an emotion is a fundamental reality. I may not know English, doesn't matter. Nobody should deprive me of my ability to acquire knowledge. NEP2020 actually generates that trigger. We see a lot of students in University of Hyderabad, very bright. There's a raw talent, but they're not able to speak a single word in English. We are English speaking, English writing university, which is unfortunate in that sense that large number of students from disadvantaged groups are not able to benefit from University of Hyderabad because of the so-called language barrier. Why should language barrier be such a barrier that it will deprive the student of his or her ability to learn? Makes no sense. So let us break this language barrier. Let us try to create resource material, interesting resource material in all languages. It's possible to do it. Because of machine learning and artificial intelligence type of algorithms, you have to refine them. Machine cannot substitute a human being, but machines can be used very effectively. So we should generate resource material in all Indian languages. We should do it. We will do it. We have not begun doing it pre-NEP2020 era. We didn't even think about it. I did all my science education in my language, Telugu. I understood what is quantum mechanics in Telugu. My understanding is unshakable because I learned it in my mother tongue. Then I acquired English language and I'm fine. It's language. So the student's ability to learn deeper aspects of knowledge is much more facile when he or she learns in his own language. It is very clear. The fundamentals, the concept becomes so clear that the student will easily appreciate the higher aspects of that knowledge stream. So therefore, we must emphasize on basic education in schooling in mother tongue languages. And we should generate enough resource material for that. If If you do not generate resource material, it will just stay around crying. You must generate good quality resource material. Most of the Nobel laureates in Europe have studied in their local languages. And most of the Nobel laureates in the world, especially in sciences and technology, have been triggered for solving that problem for which they got the prize when they were undergraduate students, young students. That's when they dreamt about, I must crack this problem. And the journey started, and they crack it. And when they crack it, it's a discovery, it's a Nobel Prize winning work. Are we able to generate such undergraduate students who say, I must solve this problem? This is a very important problem. Important because it doesn't, not because it is commercially very relevant, it is important because I feel there is a lot of fundamental question behind it. If you are able to trigger such students in their undergraduate classes, that is when the real purpose of education gets unfolded. You must have heard of Richard Feynman, great physicist. He used to run classes, large classes, where he used to inspire students with asking fundamental questions. And his classes were crowded because very interesting. The way he used to teach. We need such teachers at undergraduate level where the idea is not to just complete the curriculum, but the idea is to trigger the minds by exploring knowledge space in a manner that human mind gets captivated. If you can do this in undergraduate classes, if you are able to do that in about 1 or 2% of students, journey begins for the country. Because you don't need too many of them. That's a beautiful reality. The pushers of the front line are only female nature in the distribution. How many Gautam Buddhas we have? Mahatma Gandhi, Michael Faraday, Einstein. These are all singularities. Ramanujans, Newtons, singularity events. And singularity events happen in distribution of a beautiful ecosystem. Our only purpose of NEP2020 is to create that ecosystem. All others are nitty-gritties. Create that ecosystem where minds are fearless, minds are deeply inquisitive, minds are not after simple degrees, but minds are after cracking some fundamental problems. It's surprising. Right? If you are able to do that, then the society is actually generate trend setters. In the current context, unless we align with the good principles of NEP 2020, I am afraid, I'm emphasizing this, I am afraid we will lose Ramanujans, C.V. Ramans, Mahatma Gandhis, Gautam Buddhas, other system. We would lose because we do not have an ecosystem to identify and nurture them. We do not have an ecosystem now in the current framework. And in any ecosystem, such people are there. That's the nature of the construct. Such people will happen. Only thing is, system should identify and trigger them, to come up. Otherwise, they will. Deeper worries of not doing education properly is that we would lose such shining examples unsung. This is the real worry. Can we discover Mahatma Gandhi now? Is our ecosystem ready for it? I would seriously say no. So therefore, we need to create an ecosystem that would allow fearless, original minds to do their work fearlessly. In my opinion, NEP 2020 in spirit will facilitate that. I'm not a big mouthpiece for NEP 20. I'm only talking about the philosophical aspects of it. Ultimately, it is what you implement. Okay? You can take a beautiful document and destroy it. You can take a no document, we are all products of no document, and still make it happen. It is all how we do it. trying to say can be essentially captured in few statements. I'm not a really long speech person. I just want to convey few statements. And those few statements are: education by its very design is a deeply do-it-yourself exercise. Everything else is just paraphernalia. Paraphernalia will only create an ecosystem, but ultimately the student has to do himself or herself. Our job is to create an ecosystem where the student gets triggered into doing that. One. Number two, we have to trigger our students to do deeper things, meaningful things, not just do some trivial things, not just do some multiple choice answers and get selected in IITs. Because you can train a student to crack IIT without understanding anything. It's possible to do it, and that's the nature of the problem. So we should create deeper minds who want to learn. Learning is such a beautiful process. It's a joyful. In fact, NEP document says education learning should be a joyful process. I really like this. Ultimately, it's joy. That has to come out. The joy of learning in our students. We should see that in their faces. And I hardly see that these days. Because they are just scared of learning. They're just so intimidated by education. They're so intimidated by curriculum and examinations. The whole purpose of education is lost in this scared student. We should bring the student out of that. How to make education a joyful process? This is an important challenge. All of us have to do it as heads of the organization. How to do this? And the third thing is integrated learning. Learn in a manner that we should be able to appreciate many things in multiple ways. There is no one way of learning anything. There are multiple ways of learning. Emphasize on that. And give freedom to the student to learn the same thing in multiple ways, because when you arrive at the truth in multiple ways, it is much more profoundly touching. So therefore, multidisciplinary upbringing, where we emphasize knowledge content in multiple ways, actually makes us so much more broad in our thinking that the narrow sectarian thinking will vanish. And part of the problem of current education is everybody becomes so early, so narrow. That's a very silly thing. Right? And we should never encourage such a process. So, I've just summarized very essential features with sort of core features, and there are so many other layers to it. For example, in NEP there is going to be higher educational council of India, HECI. That's a meta body, which I think is required because there are multiple agencies which are working at cross purposes. That has to go. There has to be an integrated entity where different verticals work with different distinct purposes, but they cross talk with one another. HECI provides that opportunity. There is a regulatory vertical. There is a funding body vertical. There is also accreditation-based vertical. And there is a vertical that actually does a quality check on the education content. Four distinct verticals which are required. How this bureaucracy works is the real, devil in the details. The devil is in the details. Ultimately, when the HECI gets passed and how the bureaucracy gets set up, how the actual function on the ground will decide how the NEP 2020 actually gets devil actually is in the details. And we have to see that. What I touched upon so far is the spirit of NEP2020, which is very enlightening, and it gives us enough freedom to implement it in the way we want, in a flexible, fearless manner. And how the regulation gets imposed itself on us is something that we need to watch. So I just said what I wanted to say. Didn't want to say too much more, but I will end my talk with a story. And this story is a very, very important story, at least in my life. And this is a real story. This story has all the telltale signs of what is required for India. That's why this is important for me. I'm just sharing it. This happened in Italy when they were going through the Renaissance period. You all must have heard of Michelangelo, the famous sculptor. The famous sculptor started chiseling a marble. That's what the sculptors do. But when he started chiseling the marble, this is a real story. All other high-profile sculptors around him came and started cursing, shouting at him. Why did they shout at him? They shouted at him because they all felt that he was chiseling a defective marble. Marbles can be defective. Everything in the universe can be defective. So the sculptors would know what is a defective marble, what is not a defective marble. You and me may not. So the defective marble was being chiseled by Michelangelo, and other sculptors were totally abhorrent on it. Michelangelo did not pay attention to it. He went on chiseling. He went on chiseling. And others kept on shouting at him, cursing at him. Ultimately, from that chiseling came out David. The great statue David. Then the fellow sculptors who abused Michelangelo were asked, and they had the gall to ask him, how did you do it? They did ask him. Michelangelo said, you all saw the defect in the marble, but I saw the David in the marble. When I see the David in the marble, I have to uncover it. That's my job. So, when you see something in a defective marble, it will come out of it. If your desire is real, and if your motivation is real. And in our country, you will see lots of defective marbles. And lots of sculptors who will criticize you. But if you see the David in a defective marble, go after it. I think NEP2020 gives you that freedom. I will conclude by 3 statements that Dr. Buddha made. He said, you achieve what you dream. You construct what you imagine. You possess what you desire. Gautam Buddha making these statements make so much more profound sense than most of us, because Gautam Buddha was an enlightened soul. And he was talking about the nature of the construct of this universe. And he says there is everything in you that gets summoned up when you want to achieve. There is that construct, there is that power in the design. natural sciences may not uncover it, but the other inquiry will uncover it. And that's what was Gautam Buddha. So there are defective marbles, but there are also desires, pure desire that would make things happen. David's would happen. It is an interesting process where you do it yourself, keeping a conversation with something, and the process will unfold. It may not happen by the book, but it will happen. Purpose of true education is to make one realize it. I feel. If you do it in the classrooms, well and good. If you don't do it in the classroom, it will happen somewhere else. The person is after true education. So I think it's a very beautiful process between you and your higher source. Other people come and go. But let that connect between you and the higher source get right. Keep it that simple and it's so beautiful. Thank you very much.
Just to initiate the questions, I wish to seek an answer. Sir, in my experiences as a person in higher education, I have observed a large set of colleagues across some institutions who cannot brook a student becoming superior to them in their own field of knowledge. Are you getting it, sir? So this leads to a vicious cycle of teachers producing inferior students and they becoming teachers and producing inferior students. And this unfortunate process seems to be happening across a few generations. Now you know where the country is headed if that's a dominant model. I hope you got this.
The teachers have acquired degrees, but they are not educated.
Exactly what you said. So
this is the problem.
Like they say, physician, heal thyself. I think teacher, teach thyself. I think this is a very important.
The beauty of education is a model where we have to make students become teachers for themselves. The student has to teach himself or herself. That's one part. The teacher has to be a perennial student, constantly learning. These two cycles must feed on each other positively. That is the best hallmark of an educational ecosystem. This is what happens in Harvard and MITs. Where the teachers are constantly learning and that diffuses out of them into students. And students become teachers because they learn on their own. We should create such an ecosystem. These two wheels positively propelling each other, feeding on each other. This is the education ecosystem we need to create. Then the ego and all would come into picture. Those are irrelevant. I am better than you, I am bigger than you. These are irrelevant lingo. Keep it aside. This irrelevant lingo has to be removed. This will happen if the ecosystem is more enlightened.
Floor is open to questions. Yeah, Jayama.
Sir, let me congratulate you. Outstanding lecture you have delivered, I remember years. A couple of questions. What are the milestones? You have given an excellent idea of the theory behind it, the philosophy. What are the milestones? Any vice chancellor in the country is concerned about what are the milestones for the implementation of their work? Second point is, you have got a student has to learn from himself. I think it's an excellent idea. But we have introduced more than 100 Madan Mohan Malaviya institutes, of which your university is also a center. What is the role of these universities, and how about universities we don't have one where we can benefit? Finally, the last point is multidisciplinarity is an excellent concept. I am thinking about how to implement it. The teachers have to be first of all multidisciplinary. Are they? How will they learn? Thank you, sir.
Madan Mohan Malaviya teacher training program is a paraphernalia. We need the paraphernalia to create a distribution. But fundamentally, we have to create students with Madan Mohan Malaviya or without. Create students who want to read a lot, acquire a lot of knowledge. I want to be inquisitive about learning many things. Young students should have a lot of good reading habits. They should take hard copy books and read. Underline things which touches their core. Go back and read again. Because the same underlined lines will mean different things for at different time points in one's life. This habit of reading classics, reading foundational textbooks is the essence of education. You should create such students. No multiple choice business. This is all paraphernalia. Keep it aside.
Teachers reading.
Read textbooks. Generate students who go after textbooks. Good textbooks. Read them, reread them, understand the concepts. These are the students we have to create in the classroom. Don't train them in multiple choice. Multiple choices can be done any time the moment you understand the textbooks. You don't have to train in set multiple choice questions. This is what happening in IIT training. X number of question papers are trained. What a waste of human knowledge. You have to train them into reading classical textbooks. Because when you read textbook, you are reading the person who has written it. You are reading his or her mind. That's what should happen. Neither the teachers are doing nor the students are doing it. So the teachers have to do it. If I were to do Madan Mohan Malaviya, I will introduce classic textbooks. And I have to teach from the textbooks. Every subject has classic books. Unfortunately, we have not translated enough number of textbooks in our other languages. Native language. This is a tragedy. This is a tragedy. We don't have a good biology book in Telugu, even now.
Sir, if we have to do that, then the focus of education from school level has to move away from grades and exams.
But that is here to stay because these are the markers. You need some markers in a large system. We are dealing with a large system. We are improving gross enrollment ratio. This is not societal requirement. Let us have it. But go beyond it. This is what I'm trying to say. Have all these paraphernalia. I'm using the word paraphernalia. But go beyond the paraphernalia, which is where the real education begins. This is what I am emphasizing. That is there in NEP2020. This is how you can generate enlightened minds who end up acquiring degrees as incidental. Kabir Das didn't have degrees. You generate Kabir Das and then give him a degree. But we have lost Kabir Das, we only have degrees. This is a fallacy. So I'm pointing out that fallacy and we have to undo that fallacy. So teachers have a lot of role to play in this. Teachers are the catalysts. As a teacher, if I am able to generate 10, 20 bright, enlightened students, I'm done. I deserve my pension. Otherwise, I don't deserve. If I generate
multidisciplinary.
multidisciplinarity, the craving, no, you have to learn. If I want to learn how the tea tastes so good, I have to learn enough chemistry, right? I have to learn many things about the cooking process, the physics of cooking. I'm just giving an example, mundane example. There are many beautiful examples I can give. Anything that you want to learn about will inevitably become a multidisciplinary approach. If you want to truly learn, it's not natural. So multidisciplinarity is just another way of saying you want to truly learn about something.
So may I add a wonderful example for everybody in this, because he may relate to it. The biologist René Thom, the French biologist, he wanted to understand cell morphogenesis. It's a fantastic example, especially for a research scholar. He's a biologist. He said the only way I'll master this is by learning mathematics. And this biologist won the Fields Medal twice, which is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize. Why? He created a distinct body of mathematics called catastrophe theory, which is the alternative to when you cannot use Newton's differential calculus. I hope you got it. His mathematics was the mathematics of discontinuity. He said Newton's mathematics works when it's everything continuously. René Thom says, look, who's going to answer the questions of discontinuity? And he found it. Sir, this is very important, it's inspiring, that's why I'm sharing with you. I cannot contain myself, that's why, okay? He found out that there are 7 types of fundamental discontinuities in the universe. And higher order dimensions, he actually drew them until 3 dimensions. The higher order dimensions, the cross sections of the higher order dimensions were shown by a blind prisoner in France who could visualize what the higher order dimensions were. This is life, Chairman. And we sit on our cocoons with A grades and B grades and, please go out of the institute. I think we have to look at a totally new system, that's all. The culture has to change. I think that's his message. Can you try to change it? I hope this is a wonderful example for everybody. So that means he dived into mathematics because of, I want to know. Do it yourself. That was happening.
There is an episode in Einstein's life where a newspaper editor gave an interview to Einstein. When the Michelson-Morley experiment was successful, Michelson-Morley experiment is a light bending experiment, which Einstein had predicted. And therefore that experiment was done to check whether his prediction is right. Light can be bent because of gravitational waves. And that experiment worked out well. Einstein's theory was vindicated. The question to Einstein was, by the newspaper editor, what would you have said if the experiment had failed? He said, I would have felt pity for the God. Because fundamentally he was convinced of it. When you are convinced of it, you go to that level of making such statements. Because he was a believer in God, Einstein. He was an atheist. And he said to the God, this is your creation, I explained. If you had not made the experiment work properly, then I feel to you, kind of thing. No, the dialogue becomes that, at that level. So, ultimately, we have to get a glimpse of that level in whatever pursuit we do.
I think I'd like to make a comment with your permission.
Sir is an alumnus of University of Hyderabad.
Thank you.
So that's the story behind his presence here.
And representing Narasimhaji today. Thank you, sir. I'd like to add when regarding NEP, we are doing so much that the students should be enlightened basically in the new education system. And it is self-driving. And then we tell the responsibility totally belongs to teachers. I think I represent management and tell the management need to create an ecosystem for the teachers. The students only not should be enlightened, the teachers should be also very much enlightened. That kind of environment need to be created. In different organizations, there is a fear in the teacher of taking leave, applying for higher education, going to submit a paper, getting a permission becomes sometimes very tough. The teachers need to be enlightened, they need to be given a chance to see that how the outside world is doing the thing. Like 4 years course which is coming as a part of NEP is very much well known in the foreign countries. So we need to do a lot of things to give that kind of environment to the teachers so that they become enlightened, and as long as the teachers are not enlightened, I have a fear that how much NEP is going to be successful. That's my personal choice.
I just want to add something. The lingo of teacher student is an artificial lingo. Everybody is a learner. The process of education and pursuit. Everybody has to constantly keep learning. We all have to keep learning till our last breath. Because it's so beautiful. You learn. And so many new things are happening in this world. So teacher and student divide has to be somewhat very fussy. Teacher is a student and student is a teacher in this ecosystem. So that distinction has to be made a little bit fussy. And the second thing is, ultimately we come down to saying we should do this, we should do that, we should do this, that, and all that. But whether those things will happen in the system or not is not in your control. What is in your control is you. have to decide, sitting, all of us sitting here, we have to decide that we do our best. And move on. The rest will take care of itself. I think this is a reasonable take home that all of us should go out with on this one. And you don't need anything from the system, it is you. And if you go with that system, if you go with that thought and start working, the system will start aligning with you. That's when the real beautiful process begins.
So can I? So as you rightly pointed out, the education feeds the enterprise. Right? We are churning out graduates and postgraduates. Where is the industry coming into this whole framework of thinking and thought? At the time when the policy was being framed, was industry in some way was involved in this?
Industry academia linkage
Yes.
is very intimate in NEP2020. I'll give you some examples. If you have industry leaders, accomplished leaders, you can actually hire them in the universities as professors of practice. You can do it now. No problem. It was not being done earlier. That's one linkage. The other linkage is my students have to have industry experience. They have to become interns there. That's part of the program. In 4-year undergraduate program, the last semester is devoted largely to industry-based experience, field-based experience. And that is part of the program, and there is a lot of learning outcome associated with it. So there is a lot of give and take between industry and academia. It is possible now in future, when NEP comes into existence, that every university will have industry partners. It will be a cluster activity. The solo activity business has to go away. It will be a cluster activity, and those things are already happening at a discussion level. We are part of many other clusters. So, you made an interesting point. We generally go and engage with somebody outside the country, but we ignore our neighbor. This is our mindset problem. This has to change. We have to cluster within the country and summon up our synergy. Hyderabad is such a beautiful, powerful city in terms of number of institutes, the level of skill we have. About 50 to 60 high-powered institutes are there in the city alone. If these institutes start working together as a cluster, nobody can compete with us. Nobody in the world can compete with us. We are not even begun doing it. That's number one. Number two, our women power is very, very strong. Once we bring them into mainstream, without any obstruction, the country will unleash itself. These are two hidden weapons that we have. We are not even begun tapping it. We should tap. Then we'll become number one. Because we are number 5, we are going to 4 easily, but the real race starts. We have become one of the top 3. US, China, and India. That is when the real bloodshed will happen. And that bloodshed would happen successfully for us if we synergize ourselves and if we unleash our women power completely. Then nothing can stop us in getting to number 1. We have this is our resource buffer, unused.
Wonderful answer, sir. I wanted to add, sir, let's work with our neighboring room colleagues, sir. I hope I'm not wrong on that, sir.
We have a window of about 30-40 years now to get to number 1. If we lose this window, we'll probably never get it back. Because there are other players gushing in. So we have to do this within this 30-40 years.
And that Hyderabad University and IFHE University also work together. Start with. Make a beginning.
3, sir. 1, 2, 3.
3, yeah. Okay. I agree. Yeah.
Working together has become a burden in the system somehow. It should be pressure. I should be able to appreciate his talent, and he should be able to appreciate my talent. My child should be able to appreciate my neighbor's child. for his or her talent. That's not happening in our upbringing. We are competing. Wow. You know, when you appreciate others' talent, it does not belittle your own talent, not at all. Ability to appreciate talent anywhere in the world, including our country, is a very important, beautiful reality. But then you do things much more beautifully. Things will happen in a manner that are very, very majestic. But I think India has to do, and I think will do.
One nice example, Jayama. Airbus and Boeing are in co-opetition. You can see fantastic examples of this and what kind of technologies they are producing. You say, we are competing here, but for this cause, we shake hands and cooperate.
Good. ISRO, for example, ISRO is a very good example of how people cooperate on a mission. And we generate the best satellite images for the least cost. Technology is the least expensive but of high quality. In sciences also, we generate the best science per rupee spent. We do not spend enough rupees, that's another matter. If we spend enough resources, we have very, very bright people in the country. Very bright people. They just have to work together. Synergistically. Then I think our power will be unmatchable.
So please allow me to add, because he used the word synergy, one of my areas of research. Principle which has been proven by some people, and some people are attempting mathematical models. Synergy is impossible without sacrifice. Impossible, forget it. And the sacrifice should be our egos.
In biology, a lot of synergy happens. Biology is a manifestation of very high level of synergy. A chemical reaction A does never happen in isolation. A chemical reaction B never happens in isolation. A and B get connected. They connect each other. And a beautiful process happens where C is much higher than A plus B. So we are a combination of multiple hundreds of biochemical reactions working in synchrony. That is how a beautiful process happens. Best engineering example in the creation. And you can measure it, you know, the synchrony is so high, synergetic products are so high, unmatchable. They're coupled, they're not simply put together. They're not all hundreds of biochemical reactions put together in a test tube. No. They're all coupled beautifully in time and space. It's a beautiful example of collaboration, life, living systems. And our automation also is an example. We are doing very complicated spacecrafts. They're not coupled. They're how to synergize. So the power that emerges out of synergy is unmatchable. Then individuals are lost. No, because when there is a grander picture, individuals are not. The process is so beautiful, you and me don't count. You and me do not have to count. Irrelevant, no? Because the process becomes so much more grandeur. So you transcend your own thing and go into a different realm. This is again a same reality that we arrived at 7,000 years.
Look into the unique piece of responsibility. That's synergy.
But how we implement it?
Yeah, that was the
Because we have not really begun working together. We have never done it in the past, right? In the past, we were all little Ingrams from there.
Yeah. Sir, you are repeatedly explaining about the term ecosystem, education ecosystem. So do you think that we had that ecosystem earlier, and when did we lose that ecosystem?
I think we had that ecosystem only. This is my belief. Because only such an ecosystem would create order. Surgery, he said who Goda 5,000 years ago. It was not a flat earth first, it was a Goda. We did complicated surgeries. So that knowledge base was there. Of course, most of it was lost in the interim period. But we were an enlightened society then. We held up 30, 40, 50% of global GDP then. There is data for it. So unless we had a very progressive and very enlightening ecosystem, we would not have achieved this. It doesn't happen just like that. So therefore, it is a reasonable assumption to make that we were a developed system with very high level of ingredients in our educational ecosystem. Whether we did it at scale, whether we could have scaled it up and gone across different strata of society, then those are different matters. That's a different debate altogether. But we had the basic template. But we lost it because we are an old civilization and many things happened in the interim period. One of the biggest losses we incurred was because of foreign invasion. When they came, they had to come because we were fighting among ourselves. Any system that keeps fighting among ourselves will invite outsiders. That may happen in future if we keep fighting among ourselves. Right? So that happened, and then many things were diluted, many things were lost, many things were plundered. It became an open system. So I'm just narrating as I see it. I'm not adding any other political flavor here. I don't belong to any political system. I'm just analyzing how things would have happened, how things got out of our way, etc. So I think, and how the world is evolving now dynamically, and how we are facing ourselves, there's a good chance that we could make it, provided we all work together. And we have that metal in us, and we have that caliber in us. No doubt about that. So I think it's only time for us to synergize ourselves and bring the best in all of us. And there is enough wealth in the country to tap. And we could be training large number of people outside the country also because we have that capability. Intrinsically, we are knowledge-driven culture. Intrinsically. We should sum up that in a manner that we are all synergized. And we'll make it. And in some sense, it's a crying need of the world also. Because the rest of the Western world, which is highly developed, is getting very old. And we are literally much younger. And therefore, we have this time window to do many things that the rest of the world will benefit from. Education-wise, knowledge-wise, products-wise, material-wise, and processes-wise. It is but a crying need. I look at it that way.
Sir, given the times, I think sir has a flight out of this. So we'll have one more question before we break for lunch. Anybody, please? I thought one of the alumni should be asking question. Elizabeth, yeah, thanks. Woman power. Yeah.
So is NEP going to make education more inclusive than it was in the past?
Suppose there are hundreds of digital universities of high quality content 10 years from now. And suppose quantum computing becomes a reality, which it will. At no cost, I will be able to tap into the resources of knowledge and learn. The only limitation is I should have the craving to learn. If I have the craving to learn, nothing going to stop me from learning using resources from anywhere in the world at no cost. The challenge is, can we create enough craving in all the students? That is the only challenge. Can we create enough craving for learning
in a student sitting far away from the base, in a far-flung system, in a village, can we create that craving? Like we have created craving from UPI transfers. If we can make that, then done.
Thank you, sir. So this also would mean that better infrastructure so that people are able to get what they want from somewhere else. Thank you, sir.